The Book of Rubin. Chapter 1. In the days of stagnation, when the hands of men were heavy with doubt, and the works of the makers were as vessels without breath, there arose a man from the land of song and sound, whose name was Rubin. And he was a man of long beard and quiet countenance, clothed in the garments of simplicity, and his voice was as the whisper of the wind upon the waters. And the makers of music and word, of melody and craft, wandered in the wilderness of their minds, seeking form but finding none, seeking truth but behold, they were encumbered by the weight of their own striving. Then came Rubin unto them, and he spake, saying, Lo, the act of making is not thine own, but floweth from a place beyond the self. Remove thyself from the labor, and let the work be made through thee. And the scribes, and the players, the poets, and the singers marveled at his word, for he taught not as the scholars of old, but as one who knew. And he took no instrument in his hands, neither did he toil upon the strings, nor strike the drums, yet he did summon forth the songs from the souls of those who were burdened. And many were astonished, saying, Surely this man doth create without making, and bringeth forth without effort. And it was so, that he went unto the weary and the lost, and to the scribes whose pens were stilled, and to the singers whose voices had been silenced by the fear of the world, and he set them free. And he gave unto them a book, and in it were written the mysteries of the unseen, that they might know the way. And he said unto them, Read ye this book, not as a law, nor as a rule, but as a lamp unto the path, that ye might walk in the way of unknowing, and in the way of knowing, and in the way of no way at all. And he spake, saying, Lo, ye have been told that ye must strive, that ye must labor, that ye must wrestle the muse unto submission. Yet I say unto you, Let go, and let the work be revealed unto thee. For creation is not bound by the hands of men, nor is it a thing to be forced, but it is as the river, which floweth whither it will, and as the wind, which moveth unseen. And the people heard these words, and their hearts were loosed from the chains of striving, and they created in joy, and the world was filled with new wonders. And Rubin walked among them, and they called him the guide, the listener, the one who setteth the artist free. And it was so, that his words were carried unto all nations, and his book was read by those in the high places and in the low, by the mighty and the meek, and none that read it remained unchanged. Thus began the age of the unburdened, and the makers of the world did make anew, and they spake his name with reverence, saying, Blessed is he who hath set the artists free. And thus endeth the first chapter of the Book of Rubin. The Book of Rubin. Chapter 2. And it came to pass that the makers of sound and vision, of word and form, did gather themselves unto Rubin, seeking wisdom, for they were sore troubled by the voices of the world. And they said unto him, Behold, the scribes and the judges of men demand that we please them. They weigh our works in their balances, and declare them worthy or unworthy. How then shall we create, when our hearts do tremble at their judgment? And Rubin lifted up his eyes upon them, and he said, Verily I say unto you, seek not the favor of men, nor labor for the crowns of the market, but make as the wind maketh, without thought for where it goeth. For the work is not thine, nor is it for thee to measure. It is as the fruit upon the vine. Some shall find it sweet, and others bitter, yet the vine careth not. And he spake again, saying, Remove from thyself the desire for praise, and the fear of scorn, for both are chains, and the maker must be unbound. Then were the people astonished, for his words were unlike those of the merchants and the judges, who set forth measures and standards, and declared what was good and what was not. And a certain man among them, who was known for the making of songs, said unto him, Master, I labor by the sweat of my brow, and I seek ever to perfect my craft. Shall I then cease my striving? And Reuben answered him, saying, Strive not as one who buildeth a tower of stone, seeking to reach the heavens by force, but as one who tendeth a garden, giving space for that which groweth of itself. For art is not found in struggle, nor is it made perfect by suffering. It is in the stillness, in the silence, in the yielding. And there were some among them who doubted, saying, If a man ceaseth to labor, shall he not be idle, and shall not his hands be empty? But Reuben perceived their thoughts, and said unto them, The maker who labors with fear is as one who buildeth a dam before the river, seeking to control its flow. Yet I say unto thee, Remove the dam, and the waters shall move freely. Open thyself, and the work shall come of its own accord. And he spake again, saying, Let go of the work, that it may be made greater than thyself. Resist it not, nor seek to bend it to thy will, but follow where it leadeth. Then were the people sore amazed, for his words were light unto their burdens, and they perceived that they had toiled in vain, making not for the joy of making, but for the approval of men. And Reuben said unto them, Creation is not the servant of gold, nor is it a beast to be tamed. It is as the sea, vast and without end, and those who sail upon it must trust in the waves. And he lifted up his hand, and said, There is no right way, nor is there a wrong way, only the way that is thine. Then did the people rejoice, for they saw that they were free. And it came to pass that many who had ceased their making for fear of failure returned to their craft, and their works were as the breaking of a new dawn. And the name of Reuben was spoken in every place where men and women sought to create, and his book was read in silence, and in laughter, and in awe. And the scribes, and the judges, the keepers of law and measure, were troubled in their hearts, for they perceived that their power over the makers was loosed. Yet Reuben took no thought of their words, nor did he answer their questioning, but went forth, saying only, The act of making is its own reward. And thus ended the second chapter of the Book of Reuben. The Book of Reuben, Chapter 3. And it came to pass that a great gathering was called in the land of the makers, where those who sought the truth of creation came to seek the counsel of Reuben. And they gathered in a circle, with faces both young and old, their hearts filled with questions, their hands ready to create, but unsure how to begin. And Reuben stood among them, and he spoke, Hearken, O seekers of the way. For the path of creation is not one that can be seen with the eyes alone, but must be felt with the heart. And one among them, a sculptor of stone, asked, Master, how do we know when the work is complete? For in our hands it seems never to find its end. Reuben gazed upon the sculptor and said, the work is never truly complete, for it is an unfolding, a living thing. It grows and changes, as does the Creator. Seek not the end, but the moment, for the work lives in the present, in the breath of creation. The end comes not with the hand, but with the heart's release. And another, a painter of the canvas, cried, "But Master, we seek to leave our mark, to leave something that will endure beyond us." Rubin smiled softly and said, "What is left behind is not the work itself, but the echo of it in the hearts of others. The mark you seek is already within you, and it will be passed through the work like a seed planted in the soil." And a poet, weary with words, came forward and asked, "How can we write when the world is filled with noise, and the voices of many drown out the quiet song of the soul?" Rubin placed his hand upon the poet's shoulder and said, "The noise of the world will always be present, but it is in the quiet moments that the soul is heard. Listen not with your ears, but with your being, and the words will come." And the people listened, for they knew that his words were not of wisdom alone, but of the very truth that lay within them all. And Rubin spoke once more, saying, "You are not alone in the act of creation, for it flows from all that is. The trees, the rivers, the sky, they all are creators, and you are but one part of the great song that is ever being sung." And the people were filled with understanding, and they left that place not with answers, but with the knowledge that the act of creation is its own mystery, and that mystery is to be embraced. And Rubin, though surrounded by many, walked in silence, for he knew that the path of creation is walked alone, yet always in the company of the world. And it was so that the name of Rubin continued to be spoken, for he had shown the way to those who were lost, and the makers of the world did make anew. And thus ended the third chapter of the Book of Rubin. The Book of Rubin, Chapter 4. And it came to pass that a great storm swept through the land, and the winds howled, and the sky grew dark. The people of the world were in turmoil, for their works were threatened by the chaos of the world. And the makers of music and art, of word and form, came unto Rubin, seeking solace, for their hearts were troubled by the unrest. And Rubin looked upon them with calm eyes, and he said, "Fear not, for the storm is not the enemy of creation, but the womb of it." And they said unto him, "But Master, the storm brings destruction. How can we create in such a time?" And Rubin answered, "The storm cleanses, and in its wake the earth is made ready for new growth. Creation is not hindered by chaos, but reborn from it." And a sculptor, his hands trembling, said, "But what of the loss? What of the things we have built that are now torn asunder?" And Rubin placed his hand upon the sculptor's head and said, "The loss is but a part of the greater cycle. What you build with your hands is not your true creation, but the energy that flows through you as you work. The world will tear down what it pleases, but the spirit of creation can never be lost, for it resides within you, within all things." And a singer, her voice faltering, asked, "But how can we sing when the world drowns out our voices?" And Rubin replied, "The world may make noise, but it cannot silence the song within. Sing not for the world, but for the song itself, and it will find its way." And the people were filled with a sense of peace, for they had learned that creation is not bound by the world's storms, nor by its judgments. And Rubin continued, saying, "Creation is a force, like the wind and the waves. It moves in ways that cannot be seen or understood, but it will always return, bringing forth new life from the depths of the unknown." And the people began to create once more, not from fear or striving, but from the knowing that all things are part of the endless dance of creation. And Rubin, watching them, smiled, for he knew that his work was done. He had set the makers free, and they would continue to create in the way that was theirs, for the world was theirs to shape. And thus ended the 4th chapter of the Book of Rubin.